Good evening and welcome to the August 21st regular meeting of Council, ladies and gentlemen. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. First item on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes of the Council meeting held August the 9th. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Beale. Are there any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. The next item on the agenda is the August 21st Council meeting agenda to be approved. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Burden. Are there any errors or omissions? I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. We have two delegations this evening. And the first delegation is Madeleine Neal St. Clair, and it's a presentation on the Flying Phil statue. So, St. Clair, make yourself at home, turn the microphone on, and you have 10 minutes. Are you going to show us that picture first? That's a great picture. So, turn on the microphone. Go right ahead. Have you got a PowerPoint presentation too? No. Would you mind putting that down? Then it's blocking your face. Just put it down. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Basically, the presentation we want to make, I've already handed out for everybody. I don't know if you've seen it, but Doug Giebelhaus, myself, we represent a group of local residents who have for many years wanted a life-size bronze statue of Flying Phil St. Luke in Parksville. Flying Phil St. Luke is a familiar figure to all of us who live in the Oceanside area, and also to those who visit here regularly or who've lived here at any time in the past 50 years. We have all seen him as he strides through Parksville and the Oceanside community. He is a popular visitor to many of the downtown businesses on a daily basis, spreading cheer and inspiring everyone he meets. In his younger days, his walks took him weekly to Nanaimo and Port Alberni. We honk our horns and wave to him, shout, "Hi, Phil," and stop our walks to talk with him. We hear his happy whistling from time to time all over town. Smiling from ear to ear, he signals us all with a cheery wave or a double thumbs up. He is our man about town and Parksville's greatest ambassador. The Canada Day Parade would not be the same without Phil marching at its centre, playing a tattoo on his snare drum. He loves all people and all animals and has a genuine desire to do good and to help others. For 25 years, he was a highly decorated Special Olympian and brought many medals home to Parksville. He has volunteered for many local causes such as the SOS, the Salvation Army, the SPCA, the Downtown Cleaning Crew, food drives for the fire department, and has participated in too many fundraising walks to list. In 2008, Council unanimously passed a motion to name March the 7th, which is Phil's birthday, Flying Phil Day. We have a petition, actually we have presented the petition to you with over 3,000 signatures gained in only a month. The Flying Phil fan page on Facebook has 1,550 members, and we have the enthusiastic support and participation of Phil and his family. We also have photographs to suggest sites for the statue. Phil was unavailable on the day we took the photos, so one of our committee members stood in for him. Phil has been and remains an inspiration to 3 generations of children growing up in Oceanside. We all know him, we all love him, and he loves us back. His attitude towards life is one that many of us could aspire to. He is a particularly good role model for children with disabilities, as his life can inspire them to see that their disability need not make them depressed, bitter, or unable to contribute to the community and enjoy a happy and productive life. We have a world-renowned sculptor who is not only ready to make this statue, but very excited to do it. He grew up in Parksville and, like all the kids, knows and likes Phil. He is in contact with the head of a bronze foundry in Saanich, who is also a well-known sculptor and whose statues have been installed all over Canada, including the ones across from the Empress Hotel in Victoria. The two would collaborate on this project and install the statue in a chosen location. At this point, we're not asking you for money, just permission to erect the statue and give any assistance Council could provide on the location. With your permission, we could then start a fundraiser to get the necessary monies together. There's been a great amount of interest and support from the community, and many offers to contribute to such a fund. And I'd also like to say that we are constantly being bombarded by people who want to give us money for it already, and we're having to turn them down. Plus, so many people are saying, where's the online petition? We want to sign it. And we didn't bother with an online one because we got so many signatures just on an ordinary paper one. So we didn't bother with that. But we would ask you, please consider our request, because Flying Phil is truly the spirit of Parksville. And we have a little map with approximately where we would like it to be, opposite the Dairy Queen. And if you look at the photographs attached, it's pictures actually of Peter, who is one of our committee members, standing in for Phil and standing in, well, where we think it would be best. But we would have to be guided by you if you do give us permission to go ahead with our fundraiser. Yep.
Well, thanks very much. Members of Council, questions for the delegation? Councillor Salter.
Well, thank you for this.
I'm a little deaf. Could you make sure you speak up? I'm sorry.
Thank you for your presentation.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, I've been here since the 60s, and yes, I know I grew up with Phil as well, and I know him quite well. I'm just wondering, besides in front of the Dairy Queen, do you have any other thoughts around where else you would want to put this statue, if you could?
Well, we thought of several different places, but we all thought that it would be best somewhere on the parade route. So opposite the Dairy Queen seemed to us to be the most appropriate spot, because it's nice and wide, there's so much space there, and there's so many different sort of places to choose from right there. There are other places on the parade route which I suppose would also be appropriate, but we wanted somewhere where, because Nathan Scott, who is the guy who has the bronze foundry in Saanich, suggested that the sculptor Gideon Hay, who lives in Vancouver now, make a base on the statue that would be included in the bronze, that would be buried, so that instead of being on a plinth and kind of unavailable, people could actually stand right next to it and have their photograph taken, and that sort of thing. And in order to do that, it has to be somewhere, I mean, at one point we thought on the median somewhere, but we'd start getting tourists run over when they were trying to get photographs taken. So we wanted somewhere where there was plenty of space for people to go up to it and take pictures of each other and that sort of thing, which is why we chose that location. It's, but it wasn't the only one. I mean, there are other places where I'm sure it would be just as appropriate to have it.
So are there any other places, or like besides that one, have you scouted out anything, any other spot besides the median and the one in front? Like, have you looked at the park?
Well, we thought at one time by the clock.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's quite a nice spot, but it's kind of a bit more crowded there, and it's not on the parade route. But we were thinking that for a while. We thought that would be a good spot too. But that would be more sort of up to you guys.
Okay, I have Councillor, if you finished, thank you. I have Councillor Beale and I have Councillor Powell. Councillor Beale.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your presentation. Although I haven't been here quite since the 60s, I have been here since the 80s, and also know and really admire Phil and his wonderful, boundless energy. It sounds like a wonderful project, and something that not only would be a homage to Phil, but also unite our community, and that so many people would want to contribute to it. I think that it can be very helpful with a project like this and many others, just to have, as you have, some of the criteria around what would we want with, what would you want with such a statue, you know, that people could have their photo taken, that it would be in a prominent position, preferably on the parade route, But I think, as you have indicated, when the time comes to have the staff input, and also if it is in the downtown core, then we have the Parksville Downtown Business Association, which would also be involved in making decisions or providing input as to where the best place would be. And yet at the end of the day, the spot you thought of may in fact be one of the very best locations. I think what's important is to hopefully we can move ahead with giving a thumbs up to the idea and collecting the funds to do it. It would be lovely to have something in the town to always make us think of Phil, and I could think of many kids who would want to have their pictures taken besides Flying Phil.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to follow up with Councillor Beal and the Parksville Downtown Business Association. I know that they have installed the artwork down across from the Beach Club, and I know that they have an arts plan for the downtown area, and so I think it behooves you to speak with them as well, because they provide input for us. The other question I have did you talk to Flying Phil?
I'm sorry?
Have you spoken to Flying Phil?
Oh, yes.
And his response has been?
Well, actually, Lorna spoke. He's just absolutely thrilled, and he said, a statue of me and I'm not even dead yet.
Oh, I guess you could look at that both ways.
Oh, and about the other matter, I did ask somebody from the Downtown Business Association, and they said they would bring it up at their next meeting, but I haven't heard back. I don't know when their meeting was or is. I haven't heard back about that at all, so I couldn't really include that.
This request is a first for any council in Parksville in terms of erecting a statue, and I find myself a little bit at sea because I'm not sure what to do in terms of setting out a location in the downtown area for this statue. And I'm looking to other members of council. Anybody got any ideas in terms of how we might consider this? Because it's, as I said, it would be a first that nothing else exists. The statues for anybody in the downtown. And I've looked up city policy, if you will, and there's nothing in the city policy this has ever come up before. So it's a kind of a first. Okay, any of the other councillors that haven't spoken yet want to speak, or because I've got a lot of other councillors that want to speak. Okay, Councillor Beal and then Councillor Salter.
I agree that I don't think we have something in place regarding public art, and I know that in this particular case it is a statue, if you like, but I would encourage us to think of it as a larger sense as public art, and we do have some examples of public art that have been installed, and I guess I look at it as, are there any reasons to, against something like this? And I really can't see any. I think it's been made very clear that the final destination spot would be, in fact, decided in conjunction with staff and others who would play a role, so that safety, accessibility, and all of that would be taken into consideration. So I guess I would encourage us all to think about it as a piece of public art, which is what it would be in my mind.
Just before I go to Councillor Salter, to understand it in my own mind, you need a place before you can seriously start collecting funds.
Well, we just need permission from you to actually have a statue somewhere in Parksville before we can start collecting funds. And it's getting to the point where people are saying, but I want to give you my money, and this is getting embarrassing.
And how much would the statue overall, cost? Do you have any idea?
We're aiming at, we figure, from quotes that we've been given, we figure around $50,000. We're aiming at 60, just to be sure that we would have enough. But that's sort of what we're aiming at,
Okay.
and we don't think it's out of the question.
Councillor Salter, I'm going to go to Councillor Burton because he hasn't spoken yet. Okay, I'll come back to you.
You twigged my interest a bit more with regard to public art. I'm not sure that we can categorize homage to an individual as something that goes along the veins of public art. And I think that, like the naming of streets and the naming of parks and those sorts of things that pay homage to people who have done great things in the city, that we need to maybe take a look at some kind of criteria, and I would certainly leave that to staff to maybe bring back to council. What would we be looking at in terms of paying homage to an individual in the downtown?
Councillor Oates and then Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Worship. I think that it's important that we recognize significant contributions that have been made to the community. I also think it's important that we recognize those contributions appropriately. It's bizarre that we're talking about statues, and statues are in the news so much lately. So, I think that maybe it would be appropriate for us to have some sort of policy to guide council when recognizing significant contributions. So I'd be in support of a motion that staff provide council a report on criteria on various options for recognizing significant contributions to people in our that people have made to our community, and then we could go from there. I recognize that there's been a push from within the community to do this, and to do this now. I'm really uncomfortable with doing it based on a petition coming to council, and for us then to say we're going to get into the business of erecting statues or doing this, that, or the other thing to recognize people. I think it's important to recognize significant contributions. I don't think there's any doubt that the individual we're speaking of has made a significant contribution. I do believe it's appropriate that that contribution be recognized appropriately. I'm not sure that a statue is the appropriate venue at this time. However, that is something that it could be guided from a report from staff with respect to a policy on how we recognize significant contributions. I think the naming of streets is also, I raised this previously in council. We have up in the north end of town, we have a street by the name of Confidential Avenue, spelled with a K. So, I think that if we can name streets Confidential Avenue spelled with a K, we might have opportunities for recognizing people or recognizing significant contributions, or recognizing our culture, our heritage, or recognizing the Coast Salish nations upon whose territory we gather. I think there's opportunities for us to do a lot of things, but I think we should be guided by some sort of policy first before we just go off and do something. My heart would like to support this. I think it's a great thing, and I'd like to see it happen, but I'd also like to see it happen in the right way.
Thank you. Councillor, do you want to make a motion? Councillor Salter, do you want to speak first before the motion, or do you want to, can the motion go? Okay, go ahead.
I move the staff develop a report, provide a report to council on the development of a policy to recognize significant contributions by individuals, or no, not individuals, significant contributions, how we might publicly identify significant contributions to the community.
Seconded for Powell. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Salter. Oh, do you want to talk? No. Councillor Salter.
I don't want to carry this on and on. So basically, though, I would like a small amendment to that motion, which would be a time frame, because I know that folks are waiting for an answer so that they can move forward. So I'm wondering if we could just add a time frame. Councillor Oates.
Councillor Powell.
amendment, and I think in fairness to everything else that's in the to-do list, that we shouldn't be putting time frames on anything. It should go in the stack of the to-do list that we're going to be discussing in October.
No? What's your amendment? You got a time frame?
My amendment is to have this looked at. What would be a reasonable amount of time, Mrs. Comas?
Mrs. Comas?
If council would like to give us direction on what we're not going to do while we do this, then I'd be happy to look at a time frame. But we have 30 projects sitting there that are not getting attention right now because we just don't have the staff at the time to do them.
Councillor Oates.
Yeah, Your Worship, I did not put a specific time frame on this, and I did that with intent because, as we all know, we have a to-do list. We've been desperately trying to get all council together since June to sit down and look at how we're going to prioritize this to-do list. Every council meeting, we pass more motions that goes on to this to-do list. At that point in time, it's the most important thing in the world that that motion, just like the parking motion last council meeting, has to be done immediately. I don't think it's appropriate for us to put this at the top of the priority list, and I'm not sure which of the previous motions that we've tasked staff with work to do needs to take the place of this particular one. I don't want the motion on the parking and the ability to collect funding from parking, my motion on the parking. I don't want that to be trumped by anything else. I want that to move forward, and already that geese moved out, so no, I'm not interested in any amendment that puts a time frame on this.
Okay. Last comment, Councillor. Are you finished, Councillor Salter? You're not? Okay, one more comment.
You know, I just have to say this. We do this week in and week out. We're going nowhere fast. Yes, we're making motions. Yes, nothing's getting done. Yes, we're trying to get together and go over this, which one's the most important on the to-do list. But really, they're all important. That's why we're making them. We're not making motions just because we have nothing else to do here. We're making motions. So I'm finding it incredible that we can't put a time frame on our motions and then those are seen to. And if that time frame can't be reached, then at that time there will be discussion. Oh, well, we couldn't make it. We didn't have enough staff. That's fine. May I finish, please, Councillor Oates? Councillor Oates? Well, thank you for your information, but now I'm speaking, and I have the floor. So, if you please. As I said, if we put a time frame on it and staff are unable to make that time, then they can come to us and say we can't make it and these are the reasons why, and then we'll look at, okay, well, then we'll move it up or we'll move it forward. But if we continue to do this, we're going to continue to keep doing the same thing and not getting anything seen to.
You're going to see that when we meet in October to discuss these priority lists, that's exactly what we're going to be doing, because everything can't be a number one priority. That's impossible.
Right.
So, my suggestion would be let the motion go as is, with no time frame. We'll discuss it in October when we discuss all of the projects, and we can list the priorities at that time, because that's going to be the purpose of the meeting. What are the priorities of council? What's the number one priority? What's the number two priority? What's the number three priority? We've got about 30. We can't do them all at the same time.
Well, and then we need to look at making time frames in future.
Okay. Councillor Oates?
There's nothing prevents any councillor from moving an amendment to put a time frame on it. So if you wish to espouse your desire to have a time frame on it, go ahead, move the amendment.
Do you want to move an amendment?
Sure, I'll move an amendment. So we would let's have a time frame for October, early October. So when's our next meeting in October?
Okay, so
October 7th or 27th?
is there a seconder for that? Okay. Discussion on the amendment?
Well, I've discussed what I needed to. I don't need to say anything more.
Okay, so we have the amendment on the floor for the report from staff on this particular item for October the 7th. I understand that correctly, Mrs. Comas? Did you get that too? Okay. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That amendment is defeated. So we'll come back to your other amendment, which was... Okay, so we're coming back to the main motion. You have a discussion on the main motion?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I can appreciate the motion going forward. I'm wondering if there's anything that absolutely prevents us from giving a nod of approval to this particular project that is coming before us, and the statue itself will be created, at no cost to the city. I'm wondering what the time frame is. Well, I guess once you get the money, I don't know how long it will take before this statue is ready. Is there any idea on that, if I may ask?
The way it would work is that the sculptor, Gideon Hay, would make what he calls a maquette, which is maybe about that big, that would show exactly what it was going to look like. That would be the first thing. He said that would take him about a month to do. And if that was approved, it would take him maybe 2 or 3 more months or longer, depending on the pose and depending on exactly how it's going to be. So several months to do the main sculpture. And then when he'd got that done, he is in contact with Nathan Scott at his bronze foundry in Saanich. And so he would transport that to Nathan, and between them, they would produce it in bronze, bring it here and install it. So it's very hard to say exactly how long it would take. And it probably depends on, other projects that they had that they would then have to put on hold to do it for us.
Follow up. I guess, and I really do appreciate the need to look at some criteria moving forward, perhaps for the city on public art. I do anticipate that could be quite time-consuming, and I really cannot imagine a statue of Phil being contentious for the residents, citizens of our city. So I would hate to see this project impacted by the working of a policy going forward.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. And so, from my perspective, that's like putting the cart before the horse. I don't want to give it a nod of approval until after we get the report from staff. And I don't think that would make up much difference about what you're trying to do. So no, I don't think a nod of approval is the way to go.
Okay, so we're going to call the vote on Councillor Oates' motion. Does anybody need to have that motion reread? No? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, that is carried. Okay, thanks very much. We'll get back to you. I know that one of the things that's interesting in all of this is that you've opened up in a whole new era of not in a whole new era, but a whole new product that we don't have yet, which is statues for people. So we'll have to look at that very seriously. Councillor Oates.
Your Worship, if I could say something there's nothing that prevents you from holding our feet to the fire.
I'm sorry?
There's nothing that prevents you from holding our feet to the fire. If this policy doesn't come back fast enough, there's nothing that prevents you from not coming back to council again and saying, where are we at with this?
And nagging you.
And nagging us, because that's how things get done.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
And we do have quite a workload, so we're not out of the woods yet. Thank you very much. Thanks for your presentation. Thanks for coming. Okay, the next delegation is Peter Lafoe and Nova Gestico parking concerns on 255 Hearst Avenue. Please, yeah.
councillors, your
Good
worship.
evening.
My name is Peter Lafoe. With me today is Nova Justico. We want to talk today about yellow curbs. I'm Peter Lafoe.
Could I ask you to sit down and use the mic?
Certainly.
Acoustics in here are not the best.
Right. We two are council members representing Strata Plan VIS 4770 on behalf of Grandview Shores, which has 38 units, approximately 60 residents, and 50 cars. We're located at 255 Hearst, has two buildings west of the SOS Administration Building. Our discussion with you tonight is the current conflict with the City Operations Department in regards to yellow painted curbs to demarcate safe parking setback distance from our driveway aprons in order to enhance our residents' safe ingress and egress to and from the busy Hearst Avenue. We have about 50 cars a day in, 50 cars a day out, plus utilities and contractors, 100-odd movements across that driveway apron. In April of 2017, I asked operations to paint our curbs yellow. I was denied categorically. Reasons we were denied were, number one, insufficient resources, insufficient staff, insufficient money, insufficient time, insufficient equipment. Number two, I was told that if operations were to paint or put up signs for one group or individual like us, they'd have to do it for all across the city. With that being said, we, the council, took it upon ourselves to seek an outside vendor to paint the curbs at our Strata's own cost, and we had the curbs painted on Tuesday, June the 13th, 2017. After the curbs were painted, we had 0 parking infractions and safety concerns, 100% adherence to the painted setbacks 24/7 from our residents and from the public, and from the SOS workers and volunteers and the workers at Windley Contracting up the street on the new BC housing project. They have been plaguing us prior to painting, plaguing us by parking into our driveways. Ladies and gentlemen, that compliance lasted exactly 3 weeks. On Tuesday, July the 4th, Parksville City Operations painted our yellow curbs gray. The very next day, Wednesday, July the 5th, 2017, I sent hard evidence to Craig Reed in City Bylaw compliance with photos of license plates and insufficient setback distance for the first 4 vehicles I encountered that day by 10 o'clock in the morning. This is the next day after they became gray. I sent 2 more infractions the next day. I suggested to Craig that I'd be pleased to continue to send him further proof of offenders until a safety issue for our residents is resolved. He was delighted for the support. Then, Andrew James, also of same bylaw compliance division, phoned me on Saturday, July 17th, that would be 13 days after they were painted, to explain that he would only mail out 2 warnings, and he would dismiss any future submissions from our strata with respect to infractions, with respect to parking in that area. We're talking about bylaw number 1436, page 11, item H, called driveway. Setbacks are 3 meters. Trying to understand 3 meters from what? I have 3 concrete examples for Councillor and your worship to consider tonight. First example of an infraction that occurred on July the 6th, that's 2 days after the gray paint, was a Shaw cable contractor. We're a condo, we have people moving in and out, contractors all the time. Parked his vehicle at the edge of the curb where it meets the entrance. That means he was sticking into our driveway. His understanding is that, yeah, I avoid yellow curbs, but any unpainted curbs, fair game, no setback necessary to observe. 2 days later, that'd be July the 8th, I saw another Shaw Tech guy. He was even worse. Bumper hitch well into the driveway. Never mind 10 feet setback from the top of the slope of the wedge of the apron. I asked him to move his truck, showed him where he could park within our compound, and explained exactly what the setback was, what the 3-meter rule is on that 1436. The third was the most interesting and complicated for me because I too am an SOS volunteer. The SOS thrift store manager he was issued a warning ticket. Remember, Andrew said he'd send out 2. Well, he got one. He was furious because the sidewalk was painted gray at the time. He said to me, if it's yellow, I'll move away. If it's gray, park anyway. Why single out me, he says. What bylaw? What setback? What kind of measurement? How are we supposed to know that? Show me the yellow markings and I will obey. Look around. Everyone else is parking into other people's driveways, etc. Why? Because they get away with it as there's no enforcement. May I ask, people in this room today, who does not understand what yellow markings on pavement, road markings are? Show of hands. Anybody not understand yellow? Super, thank you. So it's clear that drivers understand and obey yellow. These two Shaw techs and the gentleman from the SOS, they have each been driving 20 to 30 years. A fourth example, I'm going to have Nova speak to this about. Nova Justico.
So the fourth example is when a resident tried to exit off Hearst Avenue on a day in April, and a vehicle was parked halfway into the driveway. It was a struggle for the resident, myself, to maneuver my vehicle into the driveway as a safety concern, as I could damage my vehicle along with the driver that was parked halfway in. And a safety concern, so it could have damaged both parties' vehicles. Another example is all vehicles vary in height, so when there are multiple vehicles at a different height, for example, trucks, vans, jeeps, etc., it really makes it a safety concern for the resident exiting the driveway onto Hearst Avenue, including a safety concern for public drivers on Hearst Avenue and pedestrians trying to cross a driveway on the sidewalk. Picture a girl like me, or a senior, or anyone in their car having to ease their way into a possible oncoming traffic, as they cannot see oncoming traffic due to a significant amount of obstruction on the street from public parking due to multiple vehicles too close to the curb to the entrance due to a lack of curb setbacks. Not only are they in danger of possible vehicular accident, but if they were easing onto Hearst Avenue and had to suddenly back up, there could be a pedestrian crossing that they didn't see behind them on the sidewalk that could also potentially be at risk of being struck. Having to back up due to oncoming traffic onto Hearst Avenue. Not to mention smashing into an unsighted senior coming down or up Hearst Avenue is an electric scooter. So our question this evening is, if the city states they do not have enough resources to paint the curb setbacks yellow, then why is it that they had enough resources to paint over the yellow curbs with gray paint on July 4th? So we opted to help the city's resources by way of manpower and costs, and wanting to work with the city associated to taxpayers by getting them professionally painted, as mentioned previously.
Thanks, Nova. We have a small visual here. Well, this is a picture of before when the curbs were gray. What we have here is a typical Shaw truck backed right into the driveway apron. All you really need to see is the little slopes, they're called the apron of the driveway. This is the top part. The correct setback is 3 meters from the top of that slope. Call it a wedge or a slant or whatever. 3 meters back to there, that's where the extremity of the vehicle should be. 3 meters back from the top. This guy, typical, trailer hitch sticking into the apron. Why? They just don't know any better. By the way, so our taxes that we paid.
I just have a question. Did this come up all of a sudden, or has this been going on for a long time? Because you just talked about June when this incident about the painting. Has this been going on for a while, or is this something that's just gotten worse?
Years. This is ongoing. I've been a resident at Granby Shores since February, and it's been going on prior to that, and I was the one that brought it up because I almost had that lady halfway into the driveway. Plus, I'm short. I can't see. There's trucks parked here. There's big trucks and motorhomes parked on the other side. I've been probably in half a dozen possible situations of an accident where I can't see. Not to mention that's just myself. What about the other residents?
Nova, for instance, is vertically challenged. Would you stand up, please? I'm 6'1". So picture her looking over her steering wheel. I mean, this is a reality, you know. Anyway, so you get the idea. So safe setback is 3 meters from the top of the wedge, if you call. But this is how typically people park. They figure this guy here, where the trailer hitch is into 1 foot into our space, he's 11 foot in violation. So by the way, the taxes that we pay to the city of Parksville, 40 residents plus our water, sewer, etc., $50,000 every single year. I have a solution for $50, a can of yellow paint. I'm serious, but I thought this might draw some attention to it. The yellow curbs that we painted, remember I said we had a 3-week, what do you call a moratorium, 24/7, anytime, night and day, nobody parked where there was yellow. It was totally safe. So could you have seen around?
Absolutely, every time, every day.
So here's my tester's, $1.69 paint. Correct setback, 10 feet back from here. So, solution, $50. So, we propose 4 possible solutions. Number 1, we are happy to repaint the curbs and maintain them regularly to the city specs. Okay, they can come and measure it. That's whatever need to do. We're happy to paint them regularly, annually, say at our expense, if the council would permit. Number 2, alternatively, operations crews might paint white triangle setbacks like you have in the Royal Bank fire plug on Alberni Highway. You've got these white setbacks. You've been painting a whole bunch of them lately. Stanford Place driveways at 250 Craig. Also the WTF store on Hearst at Craig. Very visible. And expensive posts on there, no parking to sign back, etc. We don't need your posts. Another alternative is for the city operations to quote our strata. How about they paint and they charge us? If they have some problem with the quality of paint or whatever, they can give us the specs. We'll do it. So the other alternative is for city operations to quote our strata the cost associated for the city to apply the yellow paint setbacks and then invoice us. So either we paint and pay, or they paint and we pay, or they do the white lines, the triangle type things on the tarmac, not on the curb. They paint the exact parking slots. I note that people adhere to those carefully. Number 4, I can leave these with you or whatever, or send you photos of them. I think we need to educate the public on safe setback measurements regarding, could be through flyers, could be through newspaper advertisement, could be in social media. Remember, a perfectly intelligent fellow who got his tickets. Why am I getting this ticket? Setback? What? No idea. Yellow? Yes idea. $50. So, Your Worship and councillors, I also like to ask tonight how our strata and the city can work together to help residents, our residents, and the community of Parksville to be safer when parked in these parking facilities. In closing, we'd like to thank you all for listening to our concerns tonight. We look forward to working on positive solutions with you and the city in the future.
Well, thanks very much for your presentation. My initial reaction is it's too bad that you didn't come to us when you got the answer from the operations people, because we could have saved all this toing and froing and spent. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. You're here, and we're going to be able to deal with it. Before I ask for any questions from members of council, I'm going to ask our CAO to explain what the situation is at the present time with regards to yellow paint and so forth and so on.
Okay?
Yes. Back in 1997 was the last year that the city fully budgeted for curb painting. At that time, there were 260 man-hours and vehicle hours plus $2,000 in materials budgeted. The budgeted employee hours steadily decreased over time until in 2007, nothing was budgeted for curb painting and hasn't been in the budget since. As you so correctly pointed out, the traffic bylaw prohibits parking within 3 meters of a public or private driveway. However, utility services such as Shaw and Fortis and Hydro are exempt from the bylaw. If council wants us to go back to painting curbs, we can certainly do that. We just need to put the appropriate amount of money in the budget for that. We could do, as you pointed out, the white triangles, which we have done in the downtown area of Parksville. If council wants us to extend that program out, we can certainly do that. And put out the no parking signs, or we can have bylaw enforcement do a blitz. Bylaw has been out. They have been issuing tickets, warnings, and regular tickets. We have done this in other neighborhoods where it's been an issue and have had positive results from doing that. That's the most cost-effective method of doing it. So we're certainly open to doing whatever it is that, whatever direction council wishes to take on this. We're happy to do that.
And I do recall when we cut out a lot of these services, but that's neither here nor there. I'm going to go to Councillor Powell, Councillor Salter, Councillor Oates. And after that, did I miss anybody? Okay, Councillor Burden, I'll rearrange my order. Councillor Powell, Councillor Burden, Councillor Salter, and Councillor Oates.
Thank you, Your Worship. You know, I've been on council for 12 years, and every once in a while something that ludicrous comes up. And I have to say, this is ludicrous to me.
$50.
You know, it's like, and this is no reflection on staff. They're following our direction.
I know.
But this needs to be remedied. I don't care how it's remedied, but it needs to be remedied. And we will not, I don't think we have to have a motion to have it remedied. I think it needs to be done sooner than later. And that's my feeling. This should have been, it's, you know, people get stuck in the minutia and then nothing gets done, and that's not okay, because this is a health and safety issue and people's lives are at risk. And so to me, it's ludicrous that you're here tonight. It should have been dealt with.
Thank you.
Councillor Burden.
Ludicrous is a good word. I don't know how it got to this point, but I guess one of the biggest issues that I have is the fact that we don't have the resources to paint yellow, but we do have the resources to go out and paint it gray.
Right on.
And I look at, I went out and had a look at this when it came to my attention, and I took a drive down Hearst. I looked directly across the street from your strata, and the curbs on the units directly across the street are painted yellow. The curbs down the road from you are painted yellow. There was another strata that had taken, I guess, an initiative to do the same thing that you did, and theirs were painted gray.
Yep.
It seemed also almost, it didn't seem right. I do want to, you quoted the bylaw 1436, which is becoming one of my favorite bylaws. I don't know why, but it just brings up so many things. 9.3C directs residents to keep in good repair and up to city standards all driveway crossings. It is actually the responsibility of a building owner to maintain those yellow curbs according to our bylaw. So I think we need to start allowing citizens who take the initiative to maintain and look after the area around their property the leeway to do that without going out and punishing them later. I don't know if you need you need a motion to that effect, but I'd happily move that as long as it's to city standards, and I absolutely see the need for that, that we allow people to deal with problems without necessarily coming to us.
Mrs. Comas?
Do you disagree?
Your Worship, there are a variety of issues at play here. The first one being that Council has, by their actions, created a policy. When that policy can be reasonably defended, which this can because it was done as a budgetary matter back in the day, that we come up with insurance and liability issues that we then have to address. Allowing people to go out and paint yellow curbs, that is not what the bylaw, the intent of that bylaw is in terms of the maintenance of their driveways. It is not about painting yellow curbs. And the reality is that is the city's responsibility, and we have unionized staff who do that work. So bringing in members of the public or volunteers or anybody else to do that work is not in agreement with the city's collective agreement with QP. So that is not an option for us to do. However, if we do it for one property, then we have to do it for every property. We do. We have to. We cannot discriminate once against others. So once we go into starting to paint people's curbs, then we're painting everybody's curbs. So if council wants us to do that, we are happy to do that. All we need is the budget in order to do it. If council wants us to put in the white lines, which have been very effective in the downtown, then we're happy to do that too. We just need the budget to do it with.
Okay, a follow-up from Councillor Burton, and I'm going to move on.
Okay, I understand the unionized side of that discussion. Do we have to do every single driveway in the city, or can we do it on certain classifications of roads? Can we do it on multifamily developments? Can we specify?
Yes, as long as council has got valid reasons that would be acceptable if we were ever challenged in court as to why we were not painting some other than others, then yes, you can create whatever criteria you wish to determine who gets curbs painted and who doesn't.
So Hearst is a collector, I believe.
I'm not sure whether it is or not. But yeah, if you want to say all collector, we
I would
on
not
all
want to say that
driveways.
tonight without knowing exactly what I'm talking about, but I would want to maybe put it onto a classification of road rather than every single street in the city.
I recall being on council when we cut that out because we were doing budget cuts at the time, so I'll take responsibility for that. Go ahead, Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, I want to thank you for your presentation. And I really like your PowerPoint. That was really well done. It's kind of like what I would do. So I do have a question, though. What does it cost to paint, to use the yellow paint? What's the cost to paint curbs yellow or white? Or what's the cost to, I guess, ensure that there's safety of people pulling in and out of driveways? What?
I don't have those.
Since we
I don't
couldn't
have
afford
those
it.
costs, but it's not just the paint that you buy in the store that does that. Because what happens is, when you just buy the regular paint, then when it gets wet, it becomes very slippery and becomes a slipping hazard. So we get special traffic paint to paint the curbs with, and
Okay,
the cost
so-
of that, I don't know what the paint
So
is
we
worth.
must have an idea, though, because we painted it gray. So the gray had to have been the correct paint.
Yeah, it
Therefore,
was.
what was
It
the
was.
cost of the gray, therefore the yellow?
I don't know what the cost of the
Okay,
paint was.
but we do have the gray. So we can go gray. If we can afford the gray paint, which is up to standard, then we could afford the yellow paint also that is up to standard at this time.
We didn't purchase gray paint to paint all the curbs in the city with. We covered up the paint that was there because the paint was there, was not proper paint, and when it gets wet, it gets slippery. So it
That paint was
not-
supplied by Fine Lines Painting, so they're in the business of painting lines for communities, municipalities. Your guys took 2 hours, so if you can figure the cost of 2 guys and 1 pickup truck and a little trailer, that's how long it took them to paint our yellow, our satisfactory reflective yellow gray.
I think the cost of paint and who paints and why paint, that's not relevant. What's relevant now is we're going to do it and where are we going to do it, and the city will pay for it. So Councillor Salter.
Yeah, so, and I want to continue. This has come to council before. Councillor Burden did bring this particular issue up in the past. I also brought up the one on Memorial, that there's a business there with a hairdresser and a restaurant and so on. The same thing happened. The paint had worn off. They painted it yellow. Someone came and painted it gray. But I believe that that's been correct. I think it's been corrected. I think it's got that white triangle now. I'm assuming that, but I think it has. But my question is, okay, how do we retract that, Paul? Like, how do we retract that so that we can get back into painting and maintaining the sidewalks and the roads as we're required?
Yeah, council just needs to adopt a motion to
Okay, so,
provide directions
do you
to
wanna
staff
make a motion,
and
Kim, or do
then
you want
put
me
the
to?
appropriate funds in the budget.
Okay, well,
Take care of
Councillor
it.
Burton says he would like to make the motion.
Councillor Burton, can you let me go? There's other people that want to speak, so can I come back to you?
What if I say no?
Say no. Councillor Oates and then Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Your Worship. The issue is not the color of the paint. The issue got nothing to do with the color of the paint, although I am interested as to why it was painted gray, but I think I heard the answer to that. It has to do with city standards. The issue is not the color of the paint. The issue is there's a violation of a bylaw. And it's another symptom of the lack of resources that we have in our staffing. This is another bylaw that's being broken, that is not being acted upon by our department unless there's a complaint. The visual of the yellow paint, I guess, keeps people away because it's universally accepted that you don't park on a yellow line. So I understand why that would need to be done. I understand also the difficulty that the city would have at this time of going out and putting yellow lines next to every driveway in the city that matches the appropriate criteria. What I think we could do in the short term, and I think that you know, every council meeting we have a discussion about parking in one form or another. At some point, somebody's going to clue in and say, let's have a comprehensive parking strategy brought forward, but that might be a bit nebulous at this point. I think what we should do is I think we should direct our bylaw department to prioritize complaints from, in particular, residents, strata residences such as this, where people are coming and getting in and out. The ability to get out onto a street, you know, it's a genuine health and safety issue. So I have an awful lot of sympathy for this. I don't have any appetite for giving you the go-ahead to take a can of paint and go paint yourself. As much as that'll get the job done and get her done tonight, I don't think that I have any appetite for doing that. I do have an appetite for addressing your problem long term. And until this council has seized their way to put the money into the resources to paint the entire city, all the curbs that weren't painted before or to get stopped painted, I think what we should do in the interim is to address the health and safety concern, call these complaints health and safety initiated, and give our bylaw department direction to act on those immediately. And other than that, I can't support going out and painting your own curb. I can't supporting a motion to paint all the curbs in the city, because I don't know how much it costs, although I wouldn't mind knowing that for some future deliberations. But I do believe that it's something that we can do. The one thing that we could do tonight is have our bylaw department be super responsive to any complaints with that, because it's not good that this is a concern. You've got folks that are going to be going to work tomorrow morning, they're coming home tonight, and they need to be able to get in and out of their houses in a safe manner. We're stretched here, our resources are stretched here. Often we're playing catch up, and again, this is another example of playing catch up. Parking, our last meeting we passed a motion to talk about parking. We've talked an awful lot about parking. The number of people that are coming into our city in the summertime is only growing, and I think that we need to get a handle on this. The long term, the people that live here in February and March should be able to also get out of their driveways in July and August.
Thank you. Councillor Beal, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Well said, Councillor Oates. I was curious to know with the, and I would want to go back to get bylaws input into this. It seems to me I would hate to have us go from a situation where we're not doing something to then feeling like we have to do it absolutely everywhere in the city at every single driveway, or even, I mean, there must be some areas that are more prone to these problems where it is a bigger health and safety issue. I'm guessing that bylaw may be aware of areas that have more challenges with parking and where people aren't following the rules, and and people, I think, often are not aware of this setback. If the downtown area has those white triangles in some area, perhaps I'm hearing that might be possible to expand that zone, and perhaps that would help. I would really like to see our bylaw and engineering, whoever, or operations and maintenance and bylaw have input into the best way to deal with this situation in a way that's most cost effective. I agree, it's a health and safety issue. And I have a lot of sympathy for people who are also driving along, and yes, those lines, whatever they are, they're a form of signage, and they help people understand the correct way to behave, and I think it's a helpful thing for folks out there.
Thank you, Councillor Beal. Councillor Burden, you want to make a motion, I believe?
Well, I don't want to make a motion tonight. I agree with what Councillor Beal is saying, but I don't want a staff report either. What I'd like for Mr. Figuera and maybe somebody from bylaw to attend at the next council meeting, so that we can, or maybe I'll just go and have a meeting with them so that I can speak from a knowledge base before I start deriving a motion for council based on my knowledge, which is enough to be dangerous. So I'd like a little bit more understanding, because I do not want to see us having to paint curbs on every single residential driveway in the city, but I do want to ensure that people living... Hearst is a speedway. I think we've all established that from a number of discussions that we've had here before. It's not the only speedway. Temple is a speedway. Hearst is a speedway. Stanford is, according to Mr. Miller, a speedway. We need to ensure the safety of our residents, but we need to ensure the safety of our residents in the smartest way possible. So I'd like to put this off to the next meeting, and I'd like to have a discussion with engineering and bylaw before I go any further.
Mrs. Comas?
Your Worship, in anticipation of the delegation coming tonight, I have had discussions with bylaw, and they are fully prepared to go out. And we've done this in other neighborhoods. You know, we've done it around Springwood. We've done it around other areas. So we're fully staffed now in bylaw. We have our 3 officers out on the road, and so we can do this now in terms of the bylaw enforcement. And we're fully prepared to go and do that. With respect to the painting, I mean, I've had discussions with operations, and basically it's just money and council's direction in terms of what we want to do. So we could take some time to look at, as Councillor Burden had brought up, the different areas of the city that would require us to do some work. We can put pricing together and put it forward in the budget, and come forward with something for council to consider.
How soon can that be done? The bylaw officers can start working tomorrow morning.
Yeah, bylaw can start right away.
Yeah.
Right now, Mr. Figuera is on vacation, and the manager of operations is on vacation. So by the end of August, we should be everyone back from their vacations and be able to... We're putting budget figures together now anyways for council. We're starting our budget process now, so we can certainly include... And
we don't have to wait for a council meeting. We could get that information via email before.
Yeah.
Sooner than later. Okay, I'm going to go back. Councillor Oates had his hand up. Go ahead.
Could you continue to monitor the situation at your strata so that we can get an understanding of how effective ticketing is?
Yeah, we're well experienced at sending pictures now to bylaw compliance officers. You just need 2 photos, one of the license plate and the other of the positioning against the curb. May I just add 2 very tiny points to make it easier for
Go ahead,
Comas? And I agree with Mr. Burden. We don't have to necessarily go and paint every driveway out there. How about if we just did it for those who say, would you please come and paint our driveway? So you might put a notice in the paper. Those stratas or some select group, as Kim suggested, those who are interested, let us know, and we'll put you on the list. Otherwise, a blanket painting of everyone, that's a lot of money. Number two, we want to help pay. We paid $1,100 for Fine Lines Painting, the professional line road marking company, to come and paint our stuff. That's nothing compared to, potential accident cost and frustration. And so we can be selective. So ask who wants to partake of this, and B, how much are they willing to pay? The cost share with your crew.
Okay, Councillor Oates.
Okay. Again, I fully support the need to do something. The way you're proposing to do it, I think there's some liability issues if we just go with people who ask to have it done, and there's reasons why we can't do it that way. However, your concern is genuine and real and needs to be acted upon. So, do we need a motion tonight for the bylaw to start a blitz starting tomorrow? Because that feels like a little bit too much like something we shouldn't be doing. But I think that the flavor of it is we want to see the bylaw department out there doing something immediately tomorrow with respect to the complaints we've heard tonight. And then the other thing there is, and if we meet a motion for this, I'd be quite happy to make it, is that that in our the 2018 budget we be provided with costing for painting the curbs, reinstating the curb painting program that was removed. It caused this to come into place. If I can get a second on that, I'd speak on that. In the meantime, then we could find out how much ticket revenue we're generating in the meantime, and perhaps we don't want to put the lines back in there. Perhaps we just want to continue on collecting the tickets. I don't know. I believe there's money to be made from the parking. I'm just not sure how we do it.
I also, sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
I understand the safety concerns, and I understand your concerns about just getting a can of paint and painting it. We're not asking to do that, and we don't expect anybody to do that. We're going to get a contractor who is ticketed to be able to do that the proper way for that safety issue as well. Plus, if we contract it out that way, you're saving resources on your bylaw officer having to go around and check simple things as setbacks to more important things in the city that you are concerned about as well.
Thank you. Okay, I want to wind this down very quickly. I'm going to go to Councillor Beale and Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to add, or a question for Councillor Oates. In your motion, you specified curb painting, but it might be that it would be the painting that's actually on the pavement. The white lines might end up being the suggestion. Do we need to make an amendment for that, or could it just be the line painting as needed?
Councillor Oates.
My intent of the motion was to costing to how much it would cost to reinstate the program that was eliminated.
Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, I'm just wondering, what are the liabilities at this time? We have just had a presentation. We know that folks are saying we're not safe driving in and out of this driveway because we can't see beyond the vehicles. We've had near misses. What's the liability now if we hang on here until October while they're coming in and out of their driveway and something happens there? I mean, we can send out bylaw officers until, the cows come home, but they cannot be there 24/7, which is required to keep that area free and clear, at least for them at this time. We know that there's other areas, but at this time we're crystal clear that this area is an issue. So how do we square that and not be liable if we just let it sit until October?
Mrs. Comas.
Yes, Your Worship. Well, first of all, Council is doing something in the sense that we've received direction for bylaw to blitz, and we have bylaw on weekends now, and we also have bylaw in the evening. So we have a 12-hour-a-day bylaw enforcement now, 7 days a week. And Council has a policy that it has upheld since 2007 not to paint curbs. And that policy is based in a fundamental cost analysis that was done back then that is certainly something that can be that would be upheld in court, and it was done with input from our insurers. So until those circumstances change, when council knows what its financial position is and whether or not it can afford to amend that policy, then as long as we can demonstrate reasonableness, we should be okay.
Okay, Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I remember the budgeting process in 2007, and I remember some of the things that we cut back on the budget. Health and safety was one of the things we didn't cut back in the budget. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a health and safety issue. And so I think I support Councillor Oates' motion, but I would like to put an amendment on it that today, at this meeting, we decide to remedy what's going on at 555 Hearst or 255 Hearst ASAP, because this is a health and safety issue, and it's not okay.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor, don't I? And I have a seconder. Okay, you're seconding the amendment? Okay, Councillor Burton seconding the amendment.
Could I just ask for some direction in terms of the amendment as to what remedying that looks like? Are you directing us to paint the curbs?
Absolutely.
May I just please very briefly address the liability of the painting issue re the union workers? If you're worried about us painting it, number one, you give us the specs.
No, excuse me.
Okay.
This is not something you're going to do. This is something the city's going to do, so that's the end of that conversation.
Okay. On the liability issue, have us sign a waiver.
No, we won't need to do that.
Can't do that? Okay.
No. So, Councillor Oates, you okay with that amendment?
My motion was to for staff to, in the 2018 budget, to provide in the 2018 budget to put back the cost of reinstating the program, the curb painting program that caused this situation to happen. The amendment has nothing to do with the budget going down the road.
I'll withdraw the amendment and make another motion.
Councillor Oates' motion, and I have a seconder for that motion. I believe it was Councillor Burton. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favour? Opposed? Thank you. That's unanimous. You have another motion you'd like to make, Councillor Powell?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that staff paint yellow lines on each side of the driveway, 3 meters each, as soon as possible.
Mrs. Comas? I got a seconder for that?
Take our direction from
Councillor
council.
Burton seconded. Okay. So, any further discussion on that particular motion? Councillor Oates?
Any liability issues with any other properties then if we do this?
Your Worship, I honestly don't have an answer to that. I mean, what do we do tomorrow when somebody else phones in and asks the same question? Do we go out and paint? I mean, that's, we just, right now you've given us direction to paint Hearst, and we'll paint Hearst, but
Okay.
I don't know where.
I'm going to call the question on on Councillor Powell's motion, and I have a seconder with Councillor Burton. All those in favour? Opposed? Okay, that carries. Can we move on now? All right. Thank you very much. And it's too bad that it had to come to this. You should have come to us a lot sooner. Come back in June. Okay.
They did.
They didn't come to council. They didn't. Okay, we're moving on to reports. The first report we have, before I ask for Mr. Russell to give us the background on the issue regarding application for rezoning at 846 Highland Highway West, electoral area G of the Regional District of Nanaimo, I need a mover and a seconder. Do I have a move by Councillor Beal, seconded by Councillor Powell? Okay, Mr. Russell, you're on.
If I may, Your Worship, for council this evening is an information report. Is providing information with respect to a rezoning adjacent the municipal boundary. This is a process that is administered ultimately by the Board of the Regional District of Nanaimo. The Regional District, as part of their public consultation process, has held a public information meeting. As a result of that public information meeting, there was some neighborhood concerns expressed with pedestrian connectivity in the immediate vicinity of the property in question. As a result of that public input, the Regional District has negotiated with the developer for a contribution to improve pedestrian connectivity through funds. As the area where pedestrian connectivity would occur is within the municipal boundary of the City of Parksville, those funds would be provided to the city to, in the future, construct a pedestrian sidewalk. The funds have been reviewed by the engineering department and is concluded that they would be sufficient to construct those works.
Any questions for Mr. Russell? Councillor Burton.
Yeah, will this alleviate any of the concerns that have been expressed by residents within the regional district about walking on Wembley Road in the area that is within the regional district? Is that connectivity going to be, is it going to create a different route?
If I may worship through to Councillor Burton, it would improve connectivity from like Ackerman Road towards Island Highway. It would be constructed within the right-of-way of Stanhope Road.
And I know that Director Stanhope has been working with the province on that. Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Russell? Councillor Oates.
How much sidewalk and streetlights do you get for $76,000?
If I may worship through to Councillor Oates, I don't know the number of streetlights, but it would be the length of Stanhope Road from Ackerman to the Island Highway, that portion that's within the City of Parksville.
Okay, going to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. The next report is Mrs. Comas. It's on overdose prevention. And I'm sorry, have I got the wrong one? Oh, unsightly property on 608 Willow Street. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Beale. Mrs. Ross, would you please give us the background on this issue?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The property at 608 Willow Street is before you this evening due to contraventions of both the property maintenance and zoning bylaws. These contraventions have been ongoing since September of 2016, despite the repeated efforts of staff to gain compliance from the property owner. The owner was duly notified of Council's consideration of this matter tonight and was offered the opportunity to address Council. However, staff received no notification from the owner that they wished to do so. A bylaw compliance officer conducted an inspection today, and the property remains in contravention of both bylaws. As a result, the matter is before you for consideration, and recommendations are as per the Council agenda.
And a picture says 1,000 words. Any comments on this? I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. Okay. I need a mover and a seconder that the report on overdose prevention be received. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Beale, seconded by Councillor Powell. Mrs. Comas, would you please give us the background on this issue?
Yes, Your Worship. This report is brought forward for Council's information, outlining the steps that staff and the RCMP have been taking with respect to managing some of the homeless and transient encampment issues and the drug issues that we are facing in this community. There are some available solutions through Island Health. I wouldn't say they're solutions, but they are some steps or opportunities that if Council considered that they would be an asset to the city to bring some of these options forward, such as an overdose prevention site or pursuing opportunities with Island Health for a contract work with Canadian Mental Health Association similar to that in the Cowichan Valley, where they have needle sweeps and needle pickup services that they provide 7 days a week in the Cowichan Valley communities. If Council would like us to pursue something along those lines, I felt it was necessary to give Council the options that are out there and to see whether or not you wanted to pursue any of those.
Okay, Councillor, you've had the report. We've got some options on there. Any comments from members of council on the report with regards to the options? Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to choose option 2, direct staff to request Island Health provides a needle sweep and disposal service similar to that of the Cowichan Valley. And 3, provide authorization to the mayor to write to the health authority to request funding and resources to provide an overdose prevention site in Parksville. And one that isn't there, I think that we're going to see Minister Judy Darcy, who is the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, or the Minister of the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions, and that we discuss this with her as well when we're talking about the homelessness and the health, right? Mental health.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Beal. Discussion, fairly straightforward. We got a problem. It's not going to get any better.
But we've got 3 motions.
Okay, I'm just... No, well, I'm taking them all together. Can I do that?
I made the motion as one. I didn't break it up.
Clarity. There was a motion that the report be received. That motion hasn't been dealt with.
Okay, let's do that first. I need a motion the report be received.
We had that.
We did that. Now we get to vote.
Oh, we did it? Oh, okay. We did. Yeah, okay. That's right. Okay. So the next motion that Councillor...
But all in favor.
All in favor? Okay, that's over with. Sorry about that. So the next motion that Councillor Powell made was items 2 and 3 in the report, with an addition that we meet with Minister Darcy at the UBCM.
Your Worship, we passed a motion to meet with Minister Darcy at the last council meeting.
For clarification, that was to discuss the health, the own. This is to discuss specifically this other.
Unfortunately, we are now past the deadline for being able to add an additional topic to that because we had to submit, but you can still do it when you're there.
Yeah, we can still do it when we're there. Okay, so the motion basically then, Councillor Powell, would be number 2 and number 3. Number 2, to direct staff to request Island Health provide a needle sweep and disposal service similar to that in the Cowichan Valley, and provide authorization to the mayor to write to the health authority to request funding and resources to provide an overdose prevention site in Parksville. That pretty clear? Pardon me? Do I have a seconder for that motion? No, okay, I do have a seconder. You go ahead, Councillor Salter.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, I work a lot with folks who have these issues going on, and so so I'm coming at this from a different perspective, which is we have a new minister, and I mean we've got a new government, we've got a new minister. I know that they're busy getting up on step right now. They're learning. They're going into they're on the downtown east side. They're going in and out of offices, gathering information and getting ready to make a move to hopefully impact what's going on out there. I don't know that at this point we want to even burden staff with doing that, because I suspect we may learn something when we have these discussions when we meet them at UBCM. And it might be after that meeting that we make a motion, after learning what it is that they've come up with as far as what's going on out there. They may have maybe coming up with some ways of addressing this, such as paying for treatment or opening up treatment beds that's going to have people off the streets and into treatment really quickly. We don't know what that's going to look like yet, so I can't support this at this time, because because I hope something better is coming.
Councillor Burton, then Councillor Oates, and then Councillor Beal, and then back to Councillor Powell.
I think we have a real problem now, primarily with the issue of needles being found all over the community. And I think that I agree with Councillor Salter that probably not the time right now to deal with overdose prevention and those sorts of issues, but I really think I like the concept of the Cowichan model with the needle sweep, having people going through the community, making sure that the rest of our citizens are safe by disposing of discarded needles. So I would like to support that portion of the motion, but I don't think that I can support the request for funding for overdose prevention at this time. So I'll make an amendment to Councillor Powell's motion to just go with the request to fund needle sweeps similar to the Cowichan model.
Councillor Powell?
No, I won't accept that.
Okay.
Well,
so we'll have to...
I'm still going to make the amendment, and maybe somebody would like to second that.
Somebody want to second that amendment? Okay, Councillor Salter seconded. Discussion on the amendment. Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to support the original motion and speak against the amendment, unless it's to just split the two items separately. But my understanding is that item number 3 is to contact the health authority. So while I understand and appreciate that we have a new government and new ministry in place, it is going to take some time for things to change. Nonetheless, an overdose prevention site, how it's actually administered may change over time with the change in government and so on, but the health officer, the health department would be looking after this. And it has been shown that with overdose prevention sites, or often referred to as safe injection sites, there has been a decrease in the number of discarded needles that are found out there. And furthermore, it provides another opportunity for those with drug addictions to interact with the service providers in a way that can hopefully build some relationships, and when people are ready to and wanting to seek treatment, that they have some connections there. I do understand that right now they're not necessarily providing the level of treatment that would be needed for people, but again, it does provide a safer place. It's not only about preventing overdose, but it also reduces the number of discarded needles that are found out in the public, and that is something that I would really like to see in our community.
Okay, speaking on the amendment, who wants to, anybody got their hand up besides Councillor Powell? Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. And so the reason, I worked in this industry as well until February. I was actually the front line of parents who OD'd. I know what happens in our community, and these aren't people that you'll find on the street disposing needles. And we're sorely lacking in addictions and mental health services in this community. And I've spoken time and time again against some of the initiatives that have come down from the provincial government. I recognize that the BC NDP are new to running the province. At the same time, I think now is the time to strike or to go there, because everything's brand new, and I think we'd be have a better chance to be successful in this area. And talk about harm reduction. Where is the harm reduction? What is harm reduction? We go up and we pick up needles? Where's the piece of it where we're there in front lines, ensuring that people have a place to go? And I'm not advocating for drug use. I'm saying we do not have the services in Parksville, Qualicum, the Oceanside area, to ensure that people that live in our community are safe. And that's why I think and believe both should go hand in hand.
Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So back to what I had said, which was I think we should wait and see what our government has, what they're planning before we move on this. I do know this, as a drug and alcohol worker currently at the ministry, what I do know is that the Ministry of Health are working with mental health and that Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions, and they're working very closely. I know that, and I also know that that they're looking at alternatives. The reality is, this is a wheel, and safe injection sites is better than nothing, just like transitional housing is better than nothing. But it's not the magic bullet. We do need better, we need more, we need better. And at this point, making this motion is going to have staff spinning their wheels. we're going to be at UBCM in a month, and we will be learning that information then. It's not that we shouldn't do this, it's can we wait until we get further information from the ministers before we make those decisions, because we may have better information at that time. If not, then we can move forward on safe injection sites or getting staff to do things that they can do. But at this point, I don't feel that I have enough information because of the changes with regard to drug and alcohol, and that's what I do every day.
Okay, so any further comments on the amendment? The amendment, again, is just to opt for item number 2. Is that correct, Councillor Burton? All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? The amendment fails. All right. So back to the original amendment, items 2 and 3. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, you want to speak to that? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I can't support this. This is the report from staff here shows that this is something that first came on our radar in 2016, and for us to jump into a program that the Cowichan Valley just started in early July, and we're not sure what the results have been, or to request funding for an overdose prevention site. I'm more in favor of supporting, I would support a motion on option 4, but I cannot support an option on 2 and 3. It seems a bit of a, with all due respect, a knee-jerk reaction here without knowing how big the scope of the problem is here for us. So I'm not able to support this motion.
Mrs. Comas, in looking at option number 4, who would do that? Who's doing the monitoring? Is it the Island Health folk in town, and the own organization, or is it staff?
No, it's actually the city, Your Worship. Our staff report whenever they find needles in the community, and we monitor and track locations. We provide those locations to the RCMP so that they know where the heaviest amount of drug use is, because coincidentally the heaviest needle finds are usually associated with the areas where there are the most drug use. And so we as a city have been tracking this all along.
Any further comments from members of council? Councillor Salter. There's no motion. Yeah. Okay, so I'm coming back. I think we've discussed this long enough. We're coming back to the motion that Councillor Powell made.
I'm just going to say the motion that Councillor Powell made is the one that needs a vote.
That's right. So those are items 2 and 3. So I'm going to call the vote on that. All those in favor of Councillor Powell's motion? Opposed? Okay, that motion is defeated. Yes, Councillor.
I move that staff monitor the situation over the next 6 months while continuing with current activities to determine if further action is considered appropriate.
I have a seconder for that. Councillor Beale. Any discussion on that motion? Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a couple of questions for Mrs. Comas, and I was curious to know about the mobile needle disposal boxes, and how many do we have in place in the community now?
I believe we received 3 or 4. I'm trying to remember how many I saw stacked in operations. I think we received 3 or 4 from the community. Where they are, I don't know, because staff in operations have been looking after the installation, but they're to go wherever the highest number of needles are being found.
And I'm curious to know, do you have any indication as to how effective these have been in terms of reducing the number of discarded needles in those same areas?
It's too early for us to tell. We only received them, I think, at the beginning of August. So they are something that has been in use in Nanaimo for quite some time, and Nanaimo seems to find that they are working fairly well. His Worship and I met with John Horn in Nanaimo, and that was one of his recommendations for us at the time.
And I'm curious, is there any thought to providing, such as in place in Nanaimo and also in the Cowichan area a map that allows people to see where there are needle boxes for people to access, to use?
That isn't something that we have considered at this point in time, but we can certainly do that.
Okay, so coming back to, we're back at proposal for question number, you've made the motion. We have a seconder for that? Okay.
Mary just.
Do you want to discuss that, Councillor?
Yeah, so regarding the motion only.
Salter, yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to speak to that I can't support this because I do have an expectation that we're going to get information when we attend UBCM. And so that's not 6 months out. So I don't want to be tied by a time frame of 6 months when we might learn of something that we can do far quicker than that, or at least get started on something. So for that reason, I can't support this.
I'm going to call the vote on item number 4. You want to make a comment? Okay. All those in favor of option number 4? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on. Oh, Council, we've come to the point of new business. I'm going to start with Councillor Burden. Anything under new business, Councillor Burden?
I really never thought that my term on council would come down to yellow lines and garbage cans. But I'm grateful to city staff for the response to the request for more garbage cans on Morrison. Thank you. And even though the discussion around yellow lines was somewhat lengthy this evening, I'm satisfied with the result there as well.
Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And under new business, I would like to bring a motion forward, please. So the motion is, whereas the City of Parksville has insufficient bulk water storage to supply all of the future needs of a growing population, emergencies, firefighting demands, and ecological and environmental needs, and climate change with extreme seasonal fluctuations will compromise water supply availability, and the dependence on the Englishman River to supply during the high summer demands will be unable to meet the baseline standards for drinking water, which is below 15 degrees, fisheries, licensed water flows, recreation, and other aesthetic values. And the jurisdictions that have control over water resources have a responsibility to the residents, the environment, and future generations to manage water in an intelligent, sustainable manner. And the City of Parksville is located in an area perfectly suited for supplying abundant water of high quality and low cost without impacting the low summer flows in the Englishman River. Therefore, that the City of Parksville investigate the advantages of upland storage to supply winter water, which will gravity feed during the summer months. Information gathering should include projections for at least 20 years, and a report should come back to Council at least before this Council completes in 2018. Before Council completes in 2018. So, you know, I would say a date perhaps of May of 2018. Sorry, yes. So what I'd like to say is we are densifying. We know we are. We're not the only ones who are. The population growth is not going to slow down in the foreseeable future, and we all recognize that. The dam and the new intake was approved considering a minimum Englishman River flow rate of 1.6 cubic meters per second. This year, the flow has been less than 1.2 cubic millimeters per second. When the river intake is moved upstream of the gauge that we're using at the moment to measure this, that flow rate is going to be considerably lower upstream. Canadian drinking water guidelines require raw surface water extraction to be lower than 15 degrees Celsius on a hot afternoon in the Englishman River. Temperature often exceeds 22 degrees Celsius, and that's online. You can look at that online. Toxins from algae growth in the Englishman River can pass through the new water processing facility. water for emergency firefighting can demand more than what the Englishman River can supply at low flows. So if we were to have an interface fire right now, we don't have enough water to fight it. Gravity-supplied water could be piped to several locations at minimal costs. We know that the community understands very well that we need water to be a reservoir of water, and we don't have any. We have nothing. We've gone below DFO, the DFO line in the dam, and it isn't just this year. It happens year in and year out. It's not staff's fault. It's what happened. It's called climate change, but we need to prepare. We need to prepare for future, and we've already spent millions of dollars in attempting to use aquifers for storage, and it didn't work. And that's okay. We tried it. It didn't work. It's not going to cost anywhere near that to put a reservoir, an upland reservoir storage for Parksville that can be utilized during these low flow months. Thank you.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we already discussed the storage up, and that was defeated. Staff had given us a report about why that wouldn't work. The question I have through you to Councillor Salter is, have you spoken to staff about your concerns regarding the temperatures, the water levels, and if not, where did you get the information from?
And through the mayor to Councillor Powell, it's on the site. It's on the provincial site that you watch. You can watch. You can pull it up right now. I've got it right here, and you can look at the temperatures and all the historical temperatures.
In that case,
that
I would like to refer it to staff when the director of the water service is back, because he's on vacation. I would like to be able to ask him questions when he's here. So I'm making a motion to refer.
Okay. That ends the discussion, I gather? Okay, so the next... Okay. Anything else, Councillor Salter? What?
There is nothing else.
Oh, okay, voting on the motion to refer. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion to refer passes. Okay, Councillor Salter, anything else under new business? Okay, Councillor Beal.
No, nothing. Thank you.
Members of council, you'll be receiving the briefing notes that we've prepared. Staff have done a lot of good work on this for our meetings with our ministers at the end of September, so that'll be coming to you. Fairly comprehensive issues. I won't go over it all now, but you'll be getting all those, and we can discuss them offline. If you have any questions, let me know. And earlier last week, on August the 18th, I attended at the request of the citizenship judge. We had 90 new citizens became Canadian citizens, and representing 25 countries. Pretty impressive. It was a very impressive ceremony. Councillor Powell, anything under new business?
Not for me.
Councillor Oates.
Nothing, just I want to pass on our congratulations to the Parksville Beach Festival for their another fantastic season. They had just under 130,000, just over, I think, 130,000 visitors to the gate, 131 some odd there. By all accounts, it was a pretty good summer. We didn't get the 150 for 150, but maybe next year. Thank you.
Thank you. And on that note, I'm going to move. I need a mover and a seconder to move into camera. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Burden, seconded by Councillor Beal. Pursuant to Section 91E and K of the Community Charter, Council proceed to a closed meeting to consider items related to land and negotiations and related discussions respecting proposed provision of a municipal service. All those in favor, we are in camera. We'll take a 5-minute break.